the sales taxes, the gas prices, the grocery taxes, these hurt working people far more than the folks that they care about. And the folks that they care about are the donor class.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Here's a challenge. I was going to try to talk about this during the main show because I thought that maybe I would get somebody call in on this, but we didn't have enough time to talk about it. But the challenge is to call in and tell me a source of U.S. oil or other fossil fuel that Joe Biden has closed off. 844-899-8857. But you can't do it because it hasn't happened. Even though that would be the implication that you get, right? That everybody's saying that, it's Joe Biden's fault, that the gas prices are high, whatever.
Nobody can explain how or why.
Yeah.
And obviously, I know you're about to get to this, but I just want to say it right from the get-go. Neither one of us are like big Biden bros. There's no Joe Biden signs in our yards or anything like that. So, before we even get deeper into that conversation, that's worth saying.
Yeah, so, gas prices are definite. Obviously they're rising, and it's hurting working people.
It sucks,
and it's hurting us, right? I mean, we're just like normal working folks. We don't get paid crazy amounts of money for the show. We don't take any money, in fact, for the show to put in our pockets. And we've got jobs. We do this on our free time, right? This is kind of like a labor of love, and so gas prices rising not only hurt working people, but they disproportionately hurt working people. It's the same reason that sales and grocery taxes disproportionately hurt working people, because even though a working person and an oligarch may pay the same tax on, let's say, a loaf of bread or a gallon of gas, more of a working person's income is spent sustaining themselves than for an oligarch.
Right. If you've got $10 million in the bank, a few extra bucks every gas fill-up really makes no difference in your life.
Right. And it is for that reason, that's why Republicans in this state, when they needed funding for infrastructure projects, instead of looking to the rich to pay for it, instead of maybe adding another tax bracket on our state's income tax over, $500,000 or something, maybe getting rid of the federal income tax deduction, which disproportionately benefits wealthy folks. Instead of looking to folks like that, Republicans passed a gas tax. Why did they do that? Because it's a regressive tax. It hurts working people more, and so because it hurts working people more, it hurts them less. It hurts the Republicans less. It hurts their donors less. And so that's why in this session, like I just mentioned, they are moving swiftly to pass a tax cut for the bosses. They are moving much more swiftly on that than they are to eliminate the grocery tax.
Which, by the way, that elimination of the grocery tax, that plan that we've been discussing, that Alabama Arias has been sharing, there was more polling came out last week showing a nearly two-thirds majority of the state would support that. So it's not like they would even be taking political risk at the ballot box by doing this. It's like you said, it's the donors and the wealthy, powerful interests that they actually represent.
Exactly. And so the sales taxes, the gas prices, the grocery taxes, these hurt working people far more than the folks that they care about. And the folks that they care about are the donor class. And gas prices hurt working folks even more when they rise so suddenly, because gas is an inelastic good, right? That means that I have and you have very little wiggle room on how much gas we can buy, right? I've got to get to work. You've got to get to work. I've got to go to the store. A lot of our travel has to take place regardless of the price of gas. So maybe we try to consolidate grocery trips. Maybe we don't go to the movies one weekend. Maybe we even try to carpool a couple times a week, right? But a lot of the short-term changes in our behavior are going to be nibbling at the edges. It's not going to save us that much money. Over the long term, maybe we move closer to work. Maybe we get an electric car. Maybe our city could invest in reliable and free or affordable public transportation. Yeah, that would be an option. But
Would
we
be
can't.
nice.
Yeah, we can't do that in the 3 weeks that gas prices have risen 80 cents a gallon. Right? We can't do that in those 3 weeks. So rising gas prices, especially so suddenly, it really hurts working people. So it is concerning to us as working people, as people who have this project to advocate for the needs of working people. It's concerning to us. And if you've listened to the show, you know, obviously, we're not shy to criticize Democrats, but we have to know the real cause of the problem if we want to address it. And so, because we are not shy about criticizing Democrats, that doesn't mean that criticizing Democrats is always going to be the answer. Or that doesn't mean that the reason Democrats are being criticized is correct just because it's a criticism of Democrats, right? We have got to know the real cause of the problem before we can address it. Because if we don't know the real cause, if we do not properly diagnose the problem, we're not going to have the right solutions. Right? If I think, for example, that, I don't know, if I think that the reason that I break out in hives every time I drink milk is because I am wearing Nike shoes, I'm going to start wearing Adidas and I'm still going to be breaking out in hives, right? Because I did not properly diagnose the problem. Okay? We have to properly diagnose the problem. And a lot of folks on talk radio want you to think that Joe Biden is solely responsible for this. And I think that maybe we could say that he is to a certain extent, but not for the reason that these people want you to think, okay? So what is it that has happened that people are saying has caused gas prices to increase? They're saying that he paused the Keystone XL pipeline and new drilling. But we're already getting the oil that the Keystone XL pipeline would bring us. The Keystone XL pipeline is a pipeline. It is not an oil field. The oil is coming to us either way. Either it comes to us through a pipeline or it comes to us on trucks and trains. It's coming to us already, the oil that we would be getting. Okay? So we would not be getting more oil if this pipeline was finished. And the pipeline wouldn't even be finished for another several years, so it still would not address the problem.
Right. All of this, they're talking about long-term because,
Right.
Everyone wants to drill now. There's a lot of talk about, well, we need more drilling. When is that going to affect gas prices? Because it won't be now. It won't be the next few weeks or even in the next few months. They're talking about things that will have no impact on the current spike in gas prices.
Yeah. And they're also saying that that pausing new drilling is increasing the gas prices. But that's new drilling.
Right.
He didn't stop any drilling that was already happening. Any drilling that was already happening is still happening or can still happen. And not only was the pause only on new drilling, the pause on new drilling was struck down. So there isn't that pause anymore that they're pointing to. It doesn't exist. On top of that, they have a lot of permits. Gas companies, oil companies have something like 9,000 permits on different across the country that they can utilize. And now, for the same reason that new drilling isn't going to have an effect on the issuing new permits wouldn't have an effect on gas prices right now. These permits, it takes time to actually begin the process of drilling, but they are not even beginning that process because there is an incentive for them not to drill because it increases their stock prices. It increases their stock prices not to drill because you've got this potential, and because the more people pay for gas, the more money that they make.
Right, and that's what no one has fully explained in conversations I've heard or any of the media coverage I've heard is how is anything you're doing going to convince the fossil fuel industries that they should have less profits?
Right. Right.
Because that is the essential question there.
That's what you've got to do. If you want them to drill more, you have to convince them that they need that less profits is going to be good for them. And so the reason that gas prices are actually high, and it's kind of funny because all these people that are telling you that pausing the Keystone XL pipeline and pausing new drilling, all the people that are telling you this is the reason that gas prices are so high, they are also the type of folks that when it doesn't apply, they love to trot out like, oh, Econ 101, supply and demand. You liberals don't understand. You leftists don't understand. All you got to do is understand Econ 101. Even though, like, in most places in our economy, an Econ 101 understanding of the economy is not going to be sufficient to, like,
Econ 101 is mostly cheerleading for free market ideology. Is not necessarily attached to reality.
But in Econ 101, Econ 101 is, and supply and demand is really, really sufficient, broadly speaking, to understand what's going on with the gas prices. COVID killed demand when it happened. That's why gas prices went crazy low. We were seeing like $1.40 gallons of gas, $1.40 for a gallon of gas in Alabama, because no one was driving. Right? No one was driving anywhere. No one was taking vacations. No one was flying across the country. So gas prices plummeted. And so, because gas prices plummeted, oil companies decreased supply. OPEC, the oil producing companies in the world, decreased supply. They decreased production. And production has not increased to the level that it was pre-pandemic anywhere, including in the U.S. U.S. oil companies are not producing as much oil as they did before the pandemic. It's almost there. I think the peak was 11.3 million barrels of oil every day in the U.S. And the peak was like 12.3 million gallons of barrels of oil per day in the U.S., and now we're at 11.3, I think. So it's getting there. But it's not there yet. And
as you mentioned earlier, they do have some incentive to restrict the supply.
Right.
Because the more supply, well, that waters down the prices that ultimately can be charged. Right. So they have this incentive to keep, the supply fairly low or at least artificially restricted to maintain their prices. And something that's happened just in the last couple of weeks is that the oil has decreased in price, but the gas prices really haven't. And so that's another factor that we see just as normal working people is that, we can tune in to CNBC and Marketplace on NPR and hear how oil is by the barrel is falling, but that's not being reflected in our gas prices. Certainly not yet.
Yes, exactly. That's the other thing is that even as the prices of barrels of oil is decreasing, prices of gas have not decreased yet. And so that's another issue. I mean, and that speaks to the broader issues of monopoly power in this country because, right, like you mentioned, gas is one of those things that we're beholden to. We cannot survive without it, for better or worse, mostly worse. We can't survive without it. We require it. And so they've got us over the barrel. Right. And so the solutions, I think on the short term, there's not a whole lot that can be done. But I do think that there's some merit to a short-term suspension of a lot of gas taxes. I think that there's some merit to that. And I think that we could make up that revenue by either increasing the debt or taking it from rich people. Increasing taxes somewhere else on rich people to make up for that lost revenue. I think that there's a lot of merit to that. I think that there's a lot of merit to that idea, and we've seen states across the country doing that.
Yeah, I think when right-wingers talk about that, they mostly would be doing no replacement of the revenue. Right. And so you would just see like public transportation budgets gutted and infrastructure projects gutted.
So we have to have these infrastructure projects. We have to have these public transportations, and so there would need to be a way to replace the revenue in the long term. But I do think, as a short-term solution, there is merit to a short-term limited suspension of gas taxes. I think that is, and that's basically the only thing that the government can do at this point that is going to have a short-term effect. I think that's the only thing that they can do, and I think that there's merit to that, and I think that we should be looking at doing that. I think that we should do that. Long-term solutions, instead of drilling more oil, what we should be doing is, one, we should be nationalizing these companies. Because all of these people are talking about how this is a national security issue, that gas prices are so high, that we import oil from some countries. So we should just nationalize. Like, we should not. The oil is too important to American life to leave in the hands of oligarchs.
Yeah.
It's just too important. And so we shouldn't allow these people who have no accountability, these people who have the ability to keep gas prices high as the price of oil per barrel decreases. They have that power. They just shouldn't have that power. We should take that power away from them. We should take it away from them. We should nationalize all energy companies in the United States and bring them under public control.
Absolutely.
That's like obvious solution right there. I think that investment in nuclear power also has a lot of merit. Fred Stafford, Matt Huber, and Lee something. They've written a lot about nuclear power and how there are ways to make it safe, and there are ways to do it under government control, under public control, with good union wages. I think that because of the unreliability of wind and solar at this point, and the need to have batteries with them, I just don't think that they're reliable enough to have like baseload. I have been convinced basically that we need nuclear power at least in the medium term, and so I think that that's something that we should be doing, and we should be investing in green jobs. We should be investing in solar fields. We should be investing in wind farms, and we should be making sure that all of these are project labor agreements. We talked to Eddie about that earlier. We should be making sure that all of these are tied to good wages, to good, safe working conditions, that there is a neutrality agreement with the contractors saying that you cannot interfere with your workers' right to self-organization. And I think that in the long term, if you implement all of these policies, we're going to be paying less for gas, but also we're going to have more options
and less need for gas.
Yeah, less need for gas. Right,
and that is important. And I think it's something that I feel the need to say, which is we are literally in an existential crisis as the human species and most other living things on this planet are on a path to destruction. That's a big fucking deal.
Yeah.
That human civilization and the broader ecosystem is being destroyed primarily by the fossil fuel industry and our dependence on the fossil fuel industry. So the fact that, we have this skyrocketing gas price right now, yes, it's hurting all of us and it sucks. But I think the worst thing we could do is use this as an opportunity to do even more drilling and even more destruction of our planet and take even more years off the lifespan of our civilization. Because ultimately that's what they're talking about doing. They're not going to phrase it that way, of course. And, I know that climate change is often pointed to as like a job killer and that sort of thing. But
it doesn't have to be.
Climate change, it threatens the future that all of us have. And it threatens the very foundations of an economy. And you combine that with an American empire that's in decline and all the increased tensions geopolitically that come with that, the massive amount of refugee crises that we're going to see increasing, the number of extreme weather events that are going to be even more common, and the disruption and destabilization that comes with all of that, the last thing we need is more dependence on these oligarchs, whether they be American oligarchs or Saudi oligarchs or Russian oligarchs. That's the last thing we need, is more dependence on them to have a functioning economy, especially when it does so at the very expense of our future, poisoning our offspring.
Right. And also, I skipped over this in my bullet list, but obviously the Russia thing is like that's the primary driver of gas prices in the last month or so, obviously.
Some of that's real impacts on supply, and some of that is
imagined impacts on
future
absolutely
supply. And that's something that it doesn't take long of following the stock market to see how wildly prices can vary based on people's feelings.
Right.
The Fed coughs in a certain direction, and that impacts stock prices.
Yep.
But that's the problem when so much of our economy, quote unquote, is really just speculation. Because these oligarchs are not taxed, as you've described, they have massive amounts of wealth that can be used just to speculate. And that's why, we have these bizarre things like NFTs, and we have stock prices that do not reflect at all the values or even profit margins of companies. It's all a big shell game, and we're the ones paying for it.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.